Okay, everyone. So I think we don't have any more queries. So we will start the today's session. So today we are going to learn about SQL RPGLE and cursors in DB2, and today's session will be conducted by Mr. Akshay. So over to you, Akshay. You can start.
Thanks, Pushpinder. Let me know when my screen is visible.
Sure. Okay, your screen is visible.
Okay, the PPT.
Yes.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to this internship program. So as we in the previous sessions, we have learned about the SQL, how we can use this SQL in the IBM IA. So today we'll see how we can use SQL in our native RPGLE programs and what are cursors and how do we use the cursors. So let's get started. So the agenda for today's session is first we'll see the introduction of SQL RPGLE and cursors. Then we'll see how we can use SQL statements in fixed format in RPGLE and then the free format. After that, we'll look into the SQL cursors and the different types of SQL cursors. Then we'll see dynamic SQL queries, how we can perform dynamic SQL queries, and some SQL codes and SQL state, which will be useful to detect what type of action has been performed and what is the output, whether it is executed correctly or not. So first, what is SQL RPGLE? So basically, for now, you have created the programs with the member type as RPGLE. So similarly to that, SQL RPGLE is also an extension in the RPGLE language. So basically, it means when we give the extension as SQL RPGLE, it tells the program that we can use SQL statements inside our program, and it helps to give you the better performance than the native RPGLE language if we use the read and chain operations. Performing SQL statements is a bit faster, and also it gives you a direct access to the database, and you can perform queries according to different conditions, which is not possible using RPGLE. So this is the way how we can use the SQL queries in the fixed format. Let me go to a green screen and show you. So is my green screen visible? Yeah, I hope yes, my screen is visible. So now what in this program, what I have done is I have just normally declared a variable name and a variable age, both in the fixed format. The data type of name is 10 character, and for the age, it is 2, which is a numeric value. Now to start to perform the SQL operations, the first step is that we have to write C/. And if you know, for the normal calculations, we write only C and then we perform the calculations. But if we want to use the SQL statements, we have to give us C/ and after that write execute SQL. So which tells the program that we are ready to write our SQL queries. And after that, we have to write C plus, and inside C plus, let me give you a demonstration. C and plus, and if you can directly write your query as well, and if you don't have any idea, you can press F4 and it will tell you key what you want to do. Suppose I want to perform an action on this PF, what fields I want to select. Now this is very important, the name and the age. You have seen key I am using colon in front of the variables. So this is known as a host variable. So whenever we perform an SQL query inside our program, we want to store the result in some variables. And those variables, when used in the SQL statements, are known as the host variables. Or you can refer them as the program variables. which are used in SQL queries are known as host variables, which will be storing the output of that query. So suppose, let me delete this. So you can do this in F4 and you can, there are options to, let me show you. Give me a minute. So first we'll look into this and then we'll see how we can perform different more actions. So now what we are doing, we are selecting the employee name and employee age into these two variables. Now I have put a colon. So that means these are the host variables in which we'll be storing the output. So in this name, it will store the EMP name, and in this age, it will store the employee age from this library. Simple. And then we'll display the name. And now let me first start the debug and show you in the debug mode how it is performed. strtbg, press F4, program name, lib library name, and these two options we have to give yes. Okay, so breakpoint, and I'm now calling this program. So now it has performed this, and we can see, okay, let me, okay, see, it has now executed the query, and the name has been stored with Harry and the age has been stored with 21. So let me show you the data. Always keep a habit to specify the library name as well when you are doing any operation on the file. So it has displayed this, the first record, which is Harry and 21, and we have stored that in the host variables, that is the name Harry and age 21. Now let me come out. Let me delete this and I'll insert a new C plus and press F4. So it will give you all the options that we can perform in that query. So if I want to alter the table, I can select option 1, or create alias, create indexes, create view, create table, and all these, drop table, prepare statements, insert it table, and all this update. So if I want to update, I'll select 48. Then the file we want to select is pio lib.emppf. Okay, emppf library is pio lib, and which field we want to perform action on. So if we don't know whatever fields are there in the file, and if we don't know what we can enter in that field, we can press F1 and give all, it will show us a window which will tell what can we put in that field. So this is for the fixed format, and similarly for the free format, it is quite simple. We just have to mention execute SQL, and then directly we have to give in the query which we want to perform. It can be a complex query as well. For now, I have just given a normal select query, but later in the examples, we'll see ki it can also perform the complex queries. So this is the syntax. Normally, we have, after the execute SQL, we are given the query, and these are the host variables, and we can store the values in it. Now, now what I am displaying is date of joining. So if I call this program, it will display 2021 March 1st. So 2021 March 1st. This is in the MMDDYY format. So that is why it is showing 3 at the beginning and 21 at the end. Now, this is the basic syntax, how we can perform the SQL queries in it. This was the free format. And now let us see how we can update and perform update or delete operations. So this is the syntax for the update query. You must have, if you know SQL, you must have gone through the update query. So what I am doing here is updating the EMPPF in PIO-lib. And now I'm setting the EMP name as Harry with triple Y, and where employee age is 21. Now this where condition is very important because it filters out the result. If I don't mention this where condition, so it will update all the EMP name for all the records, which we don't want. So what we are doing, we are just updating the record for the employee ID 21. So right now the employee age 21 has the name Harry with a single Y. Now if I call this, and now the name has been updated. And if I did not specify the where condition, so all the names would have been updated with Harry. This is how we can perform the update operation. Similarly for delete, we can write down delete from emppf.piolib .emppf where name is equal to, let's say, what I have given. And now compile it. It is the same option, the 14, which from which we compile the normal RPGLE programs. Okay. And for every SQL statement, we have to specify the execute SQL statements, which will tell the program that this is a SQL query. This is mandatory for every SQL operation. Now I have called it, and okay, EMP. The column name was EMP name, but I was writing a normal name, that is why it was not. See, the employee ID 1 has been deleted because we have performed a delete operation using SQL. So that was how we can perform SQL queries inside our RPGLE programs. Now the next topic is SQL cursors. So in our previous sessions, we have seen how we can read the entire table using the RPGLE operations. So SQL cursors is also a kind of same thing, which will manipulate the data row by row. So, and instead of performing on the complete data set, it will perform actions on row by row. And it is helpful when we have a large data set and we want to perform actions on certain chunks of data. So in that case, it is helpful. And now the SQL cursors are of 4 types: the serial cursors, the scrollable cursors, the sensitive, and the insensitive cursors. We'll look at them one by one. So very first, we'll see how we are use cursors in RPGLE program. So see, on line number 1 and 2, I have declared 2 variables normally, which is of a character 10 and zone 3. Now we are using a SQL in our program. So we have to give an execute SQL, and after that we have to write the create a cursor. So this is the syntax: declare. Here you can specify the name of the cursor. You can give any name, but I'll suggest to give some understandable name. So declare employee detail cursor for, this is the syntax to declare a cursor. And after that you have to give the query. So what I'm doing is I'm declaring an employee detail cursor for this particular query. Select employee name, employee ID from PIOLA BMPPF, order by this. So now after when we go in, let's go into debug and see what is happening. Okay, so I've called it. Before that, this is a serial cursor. So what serial cursor means, that in this cursor you can only read the record from the next record only. You cannot go to any particular record. It just moves sequentially or serially from first to second to third to fourth and till the end of file. So that's why it is known as a serial cursor, and there is no way we can go back to the previous record. It will only move in the forward direction. And here we have declared this is a serial cursor. The normal cursor is automatically a serial cursor. We don't need to specify any keyword for that. Now, the first step of creating a cursor has been done. And the next step is to open the cursor. So again, we have to use execute SQL and open employee detail. Employee detail was the name of the cursor which I have defined. So it has opened that cursor. Now what I am doing is I am executing SQL fetch employee detail into this. So what it will do, it will point to the first record and it will capture those details in these host variables. Now I have only selected two fields. You can see the employee name and the employee ID. So that is why I am giving only two host variables to store the data. If you selected multiple fields and you want to store the data of that, so you have to use multiple variables in that. So I have fetched it. If I do F10 and then see the name, it is Gary, and the employee ID is 02. It is reading the first record and the employee ID is 2. Now this is displaying. Now I am running a loop until the SQL code is 0. So we'll learn about the SQL code later. So for now you can make it like you can take it as SQL code 0 means that you have successfully ran the query. So if we have to check the SQL code, we can use eval SQL code, that means 0. So if SQL code is 0, that means the query has been executed successfully. So what I'm doing, I'm running a loop until the SQL code is 0. So that means run till the query runs successfully. So after that SQL code is 0, it will display, and then I have issued another fetch command, execute SQL fetch next from this. So this next is not mandatory. So if you don't specify next, you can just specify this. So it will automatically read the next record. So now I'm executing, I'm reading the next record from the file F10. And now if I see, the name is this. Okay. Okay, I think I have and run it too many times, so it has directly pointed to the last record. No, this is the third. So it will, I have done a order by. See, I have done a order by here. So it will order by employee ID. So let me, the query will be this. So Gary has been read and Larry has been read. Now again it will go in the condition because it has successfully read the record. Again it will display and again it will read the next record. And now it has read the employee ID 4, that is Mary. This is similar to the what read setll and read we have performed. So in that we do a do while until end of file, do while until % end of file is reached. So here instead of end of file we are using SQL code, and again it will read the next record. This is the last record. Now it will, okay, there is one more record. Now see, if we see the SQL code now, it is 100. So it will come out of the loop, and SQL code 100 means there is no more records in the file. So in that case, the SQL code becomes 100. These are the SQL variables. We don't need to declare it. They are automatically stored in the SQL and we can directly use these. And the last step for the cursors is to close the cursor and then the program ends. So let me again show you how to use the cursors. The very first step is to declare the cursor. You can write any complex query in it. It will get you the data set of any complex query. So right now we are using a simple select query. So this is the syntax: declare the cursor name, cursor for whatever query you want to perform. So in the backend, it will generate the data set of this query. And then the next step is to open the cursor. At this point, in the backend, the data set has been created when you open the cursor. And after that, we are using a fetch statement. So it will point to the first record, it will fetch the first record, and whatever action you want to perform on that, you can do that. I'm just displaying it right now, but you can perform any action on it, whether you want to store in some other variables and use those variables. And then next we have to use another fetch statement. So it will point directly to the next record. This is about the serial cursors or the sequential cursors. Now the next one is the scrollable cursors. So let's see the scrollable cursor. It is also a kind of a serial cursor, but in this we have the ability to go to any record. So like from first I want to go to this record 5, from second employee ID 2 I want to directly go to the employee ID 5. I can do that. I can go to previous record, I can go to the last record. So it gives us the ability to go to any record in that data set. So let's see. So similarly, we have to declare the cursor first. So execute SQL. Then in this, we have to give a keyword scroll, which will tell the program that this is a scrollable cursor and everything is same. So declare employees. Employee is the name of the cursor. You can give any random name, but it should be readable and understandable. And then scroll is the keyword and everything is same, cursor for. And after that, we have to write the query for which we have created the cursor. Here, similarly, I am like the previous program, I have using the same query, select employee name ID from this file and order it by employee ID. This is the syntax to create a scroll cursor. And then similar to the serial cursors, we have to open it. And then we can perform a lot of actions, like if we normally use fetch statement, so it will fetch the first record, or if we use the fetch next, it will read the next record. We can also use fetch first from that cursor. So wherever the cursor is, if we perform the fetch first operation, so it will fetch the first record. And then this relative 3 I'll show you in debug mode. And apart from this, we can fetch last, so it will point to the last record, and fetch prior also, so it will act as read p, so it will if read the previous record. So this is the functionality scrollable cursors provide us. Let me debug this. Okay, I have to compile it in the source. 14 F4, press F10 and page down. So you will see an option debugging view. You have to give it star source. So when you debug it, the source will also be there. And you can press F9 key to go to the previous typed command. Like I'm pressing F9. So it went to the previous type command. These are the shortcuts. So now breakpoint has been set and I'll call this. Okay. So these are two variables which has been declared. After that, I have declared the cursor for a scroll cursor for this query. And when I open this query, when I open this cursor, this data set will be stored somewhere in the backend and it will refer to this table. And then what I'm doing is I'm executing SQL fetch employees. I can directly give a fetch statement or a fetch next, that is the same thing. It will next is not mandatory. Even if we don't specify next, it will read the next record. So, and these are host variables in which I am storing the data. So it has read the first record. Okay. Now same SQL code is 0 do while until then. So it has read successfully. So the SQL code will be 0. We can evaluate. So SQL code is 0. Then displaying. Then I'm fetching the next. So it has read the next record, which is Larry. And okay, so it will run into the inside the loop until all the records has been read. This is again, okay, now it has gone to the come out of the undo. Now that means it has read all these 5 records and there are no more records in the table. So in that case, when there are no records in the table, the SQL code becomes 100. So if I see SQL code C100, that means there are no more records or the records are not available. So now I put a condition if SQL code is 100. So it will go inside this condition. Now I'm performing fetch first. So after pressing F1, it has again fetched the first record. And after that, if I have used fetch prior, so it would have fetched the previous record, and fetch last is to fetch the last record. And relative 3, I'll tell you. So now the cursor is at the first record because previously we have read the first. So before executing this condition, the record was at this cursor. Now this relative 3 means we will take the cursor to 3 steps forward. So now if I have executed this, name is Terry. So 1, it has skipped the third, 1, 2, and 3. It has directly put the cursor at the 5th record. So this is very useful if you directly want to jump to any record. You can use this relative n. N means the number which you want to jump. And after the end if what I have done is fetched the last record, fetch last. So if I now see the value of name, it will be the last record. So this is the benefit which SQL using SQL in our RPGLE programs provide us, because if we were using the normal read operations of RPGLE, we could not have modified the table according to the query. So here we can declare any type of query and work upon that, and we can go to last, first, any record. So I'll again explain this to you. So for scrollable cursors, the first step is also to declare a cursor with the scroll keyword. Then open cursor will execute this query in the backend and store the data set in the backend. Then what I am doing, I am executing SQL and fetching the first record into these host variables. And then after it has fetched, that means it has successfully executed, it has found the record. So the SQL code will be 0. Then I am doing until the SQL code is 0 and normally declaring the employee ID and the name. So it will run inside this loop until the end of file is reached or there are no more records. So after displaying, it will again execute, it will read the next record. So in first loop, for the first iteration, it will read this, then display, then it will read this, then display, then it will read the fourth record, then display, then the fifth record, it will display, and again it will go to check the SQL code. So this time the SQL code is 100, that is not 0. So it will directly go to the undo, and after that I have written a statement that if SQL code is 100. So if there are no more records, the SQL code is 100. So it will go inside this and it will fetch first record into these host variables. That is the employee ID 2 and name Gary. And after that, it will display that. And then it will fetch relative n. N is 3. So it will fetch the third record from this. It currently the pointer is at Gary. So it will fetch 3 records after this. So Larry, Mary, and Terry. It has read Terry. And it will then display it. And after that, the last statement is SQL fetch last. So it will fetch the last record. And at the end, close the cursor. So these are the steps to work on cursors. Declare the cursor, open the cursor, then fetch whatever you want to fetch and perform action, and at the end close the cursor. Then these were the scrollable cursors. Then there are sensitive cursors and insensitive cursors. So first we'll see insensitive cursors. So by the name suggest, insensitive means they are not much sensible. So suppose I'll show you by an example. Yep. So similarly, I have declared a sensitive cursors. We have to give a sensitive keyword. And if I want to declare a sensitive scroll cursor, so we can give the scroll keyword as well. So now it is sensitive as well as scrollable. Okay. And similarly, the whatever query we want to give, then we have opened the cursor and then we have fetched first record into this. And after that, we are again we have performed a fetch first. So let's see. I'll show you in debug this also. Okay, so this is a sensitive cursor. So it has fetched the first record, which is Gary, right? Now suppose I'll perform an update on this table. Update piolib emppf set emp name is equal to, suppose I have given 3 y's at the end, where emp name is equal to Gary. Okay, so one row has been updated. And if I now perform this fetch first, so it has fetched the updated record. So that means it is sensitive to change. So whatever change we have done in that particular table or cursor from any third party transaction, so it will reflect into that cursor. So now it is a sensitive So it has reflected the change when we are running that fetching from the cursor. But after the closing of the cursor, it will read from the starting. But within the opening and the closing of the cursor, if I am performing any action, so even when we give the sensitive keyword, so it will be sensitive to change, and it will read the updated data. Now let's make this sensitive as insensitive. Okay, and file it, compile it in source. enddbg and again F9 to go to the previous command. Now I've set the breakpoint, and if I call this, okay, now this is an insensitive cursor, so that means it will not be sensitive to any change done from any third-party transaction. So first it will read the first record, which is Gary. In that case, if I run a query, so it has read this record. Now suppose I again change the name to this, and okay, so one row has been updated. And if I again fetch it, so it has read the record which was previously which was before updating, because we have updated it, but it has not reflected the change. So that is the difference between the sensitive and insensitive cursor. Insensitive cursor will not detect any change in that data set if done from any other transaction. And similarly, in case of sensitive cursor, it will detect any change made to that particular table which is used in the cursor, and it will reflect those changes. So these were the 4 types of cursors. Let me again show you the program. The way to create cursor is we have to declare the cursor and declare after the that cursor name whichever we want to give. And after that, if it is a normal cursor, then we can directly use this. But if we want to define a sensitive, insensitive, or scroll cursor, we have to specify that keyword before this, and it will perform actions based on that type of the cursor. Then we have to open the cursor, and then we have to fetch the record from the cursor and perform any actions. So these were the cursors. Now the next point is the dynamic SQL. So what dynamic SQL is, it is also you can say it is a way to perform queries in the RPGLE program, where we can pass in the parameters, where we can handle the queries based on the user input. And the steps to perform that is we'll construct a query, then prepare the query and execute the query. And we can directly use the execute immediate keyword, which will prepare and execute, which will do this both work in the same keyword. So let us go to the program. So in this program, let me debug this. So I have to first end the debug. Okay, it has been ended. Anyways, okay, here. enddbg breakpoint 1 and test pgm7 I'm calling. Okay. So these are the variables which I have declared. The employee age, which is a zoned field, which has been initialized with 27 value. Then I have declared a variable SQLRPGLE which is a variable character length of 100. Then new name character 10, which has been initialized with Jerry. The new ID, which is initialized with 7. New age, which has been initialized with 34. And new date of joining, new DOJ, which is a date format of star ISO type. Okay, so now what first I am doing is I am storing today's date, this new DOG variable. So after performing this, it will reflect today's date in star ISO format. Okay. And after that, what I am doing, I have in the SQL statement, I have stored a string, which is a query, SQL query. So if I give this F11 on this, so basically this is a query where I am deleting from this where employee age is greater than question mark. I'll tell you what it is, and limit 1, that means only one record. So this is the dynamic query where we can give the value of this question mark according to the our choice. So again, what here I'll not delete the record from this file. I'm again storing some value in the SQL statement. Now the latest value of SQL statement is insert into this table where the values will be passed by the user. So question mark means the value will be given by user. Now how it will be given, I'll show you. Now the string is holding the SQL statement. So the very first step is to prepare a cursor from that statement. So prepare is the keyword, and instead of P1 you can give any name, and from this host variable. So what it is saying, ki execute an SQL query, prepare a P1 cursor from this statement. So it has prepared the statement. Now this string has been converted into a executable SQL query. So the main agenda of prepare statement is to make this as an executable SQL query. Now there were question marks. So the next step is as execute SQL, execute P1. P1 is the name which we have given. So execute P1 using. So here we can give the values which we want to pass. So in the query I have given question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, 4 question marks. And then I'm executing that prepared query using new ID, new name, new age, and new DOG. So the value of new ID is 7. The value of new name is Jerry. The value of new age is 34. And the new date of joining is this 2023, today's date. So what I'm saying, key using use these 4 variables and execute the query this which we have prepared. So instead of question mark, it will put in these 4 variables which I have given after the using keyword. And if I press F10 and see what has been reflected into the table. So it has inserted one record using the values which we have given as an input. So 7 was the new MP age, new EMP name was Jerry, new MP name was Jerry, new EMP age was 34, and this was the new employee date of joining. And if we SQL code, that is 0 means the query has been successfully executed. So this is where we can pass the values dynamically using the prepare and execute, and this using keyword. Now let's come out of this. Now there is one more thing. This we have taken into consideration that first we have to construct a query into a string. Then the next step is to prepare that query. That means make that string into an executable SQL query. And after that execute that query. And if we have used some dynamically passed value, so we can use using keyword. Now another way is where we can construct a query, store a query into a string, and directly execute it using execute immediate. So let us see this also. So what I'm doing is I'm storing a statement into a string, and this I am using execute SQL immediate, and this means execute immediate this statement. So see, it has, okay, it has not. Okay, so I'll tell you why it is not deleted that record. But before that, I want to show you how we can update and delete some rows using cursors. Let me compile this in source. Let me show you what I have written. So I have declared a cursor. Now I have given a normal name C1 for this select EMP name from this table. So let me show you the data of this table. This is the data, 2 records with name Ajay and Himanshu. And then I'm opening the cursor. I'm fetching the first record. That means now the pointer after is at this. When this line will be executed, the pointer will be set at the first record. And after that, if SQL code is 0, means if it has successfully read the record, what we are doing, we are telling the program to execute an SQL statement, which is update that table, set employee name as new name, where this is the keyword, where current of C1 means where the current pointer of C1 cursor is set at. So let's debug it. I'll make this name to something different. 14F4, compile it in source. Test pgm09 pio lib. Yes, yes. Okay. Yep. So these are two variables declared. So the value of new name is Akshay. Now I have declared a cursor, and now I open the cursor. So this table will be stored somewhere in the backend. And after that, I'm execute fetch C1 into variable 1. So variable 1 will hold Ajay because the query is I'm only selecting the employee name. So the employee name of the first record has been updated in this host variable. And then what we are doing is we are updating that file and setting the employee name as this new name. So whenever we are using any program variable in SQL, we have to give this code, which will tell the SQL query and the SQL handler that this is a host variable. And what I'm giving after that is where current of C1 means where the current pointer of that particular cursor is at. So I have executed it. And if I see now, the name has been updated where the current pointer was set. So this is the way where we can use cursors to update the query. Now, even if we use the see the SQL code, that is 0. So that means it has successfully executed the query. Now let us come out of this sensitive. I have done it. Now SQL codes I'll show you. So let me compile this in source. Now SQL codes and SQL state. Give me a minute. Okay. So SQL code and SQL state. So what are these? So these are some numeric values that will indicate us how that particular SQL operation has gone. So if we talk about the DB2 only, the SQL codes are more useful. It has some values that we have seen that 0 is if it has successfully executed, and if it is a positive value, that means the query has been executed, but there were some issues in that query or some warnings which it had given. And in any case it is a negative value, that means that particular SQL query has not been successfully executed. And then we have SQL state. So SQL state is more of a generic thing which is in all the database systems like the DB2, MySQL, MS SQL. So in each one of that, SQL state is common. So it is more recommended that we use SQL state, because if we are using some third-party databases, so it will be useful to detect the error. It will, the thing is that it will be also be same as SQL codes, the but the values will be different because it is a 5-character code and it can be alphanumeric, where the first 2 character represent the class of the error and the last 3 represents what the more information about the error. I have given 2 links of the IBMI documentation where we can check on the various SQL state and SQL error codes which we may encounter in our programs. So for 100 we have seen that it is for the end of file or no record found. 0, that means it is a 0, that means it has successfully executed. And let's see. Okay, let me start the debug first. strdbg test pgm11 piolib. Yes, yes. Okay. endbg. Okay. Now I have set the breakpoint. I'm call. Okay, what is happening? Okay, so this one. Now I'm calling it. So 2 variables declared, and the new name is initialized with Lakshay and new ID is initialized with 1. Now what I am doing, I am performing a insert operation into the table. This is a normal insert query. Insert into this table where values are new ID and new name. So it has executed. Let's see the SQL code. So it says SQL code -803. It is negative, but that means it has not successfully executed. But by looking at the query, we can see that this is a normal correct query. Why it has not been executed, we don't know. And SQL state is also not 0, that means there is some error with the query. If the SQL state is 5 times 0, that means it is successfully executed. But we know that this has not been executed by looking at the SQL code, but we don't know why it did not execute. So in that case, we use the diagnostic options. So get diagnostic is a way to determine that why our query did not execute and what went wrong. So let me debug this endbg, and this is the program for the get diagnostic. It is the same program where I have executed an SQL query, same insert into this. And after that, I have given one more statement, execute SQL, get diagnostics, and condition is message tag, whatever message text it has given, it will store in this post variable message. So this message text, it is a SQL variable and it holds the value of the error which has been given by that query. So when we give get diagnostics, so it will store this message text into this post variable msg. So let us compile it in this source. And then and debug. Okay, strdbg test pgm12 piolib and yes, yes. Okay, breakpoint set. Now I'm calling it. Yes. So this statement has been executed, and if we see the SQL code, it is still -803. Now let okay, sorry, I've pressed F12. Let me again call it. Yep, it has executed this. SQL code is -803 F10. Now whatever the error this query has returned, it will be stored in this host variable MSG. So if we check the value of this, duplicate key value specified. Why? Because when I created this table, I have given a keyword unique. That means it will only hold unique key values. So in the program, what we were doing, we were giving a value which is already there in the file. So it is giving an error that it cannot hold any duplicate key values. So this is the way we can check what error has been given by that SQL query. So this is done. But I want to show you one more thing. Now suppose we want, let me create a program. SQL RPGLE, we should give the type if we are using SQL statements. What I am doing, I am declaring a data structures. Let's say test data, and I am giving a name, ext name as emppf, right? So what I'm saying to this program that this is a data structure and refer to this file as the subfields of this data structure. Then there were some questions from people that why it is showing reverse image. So in free format, it will show the reverse image irrespective of whether you have written correctly or not. Just try to file it and compile it. If did not compile, you can go to the spool file and check the errors. So execute SQL. I am declaring declare C1 cursor for select emp name. Okay, let me check the emp id, emp name. Okay. emp id, emp name, emp age, and emp date of joining from piolib emppf. Okay, then execute SQL, open C1, fetch. Okay, now before this I'll declare one more variable, dcls count underscore, and I am giving it as zoned of 2 and initializing it with blanks. Now I'll explain this to you. Just give me a minute. Let me. I hope it is correct. Not this one. Okay. Execute SQL declares even cursor for this. Execute is a select count into count from PIOLAB PF. Execute SQL open, then fetch from C1 into dash TS. I think it is correct. Okay, a qualified name is not allowed in this context, and DS is missing. Okay. So let me debug this and show you what I have done. It's compiled it in source strdbg test pgm. Okay, one more thing I wanted to do. Let me leave it. Okay. So I have declared a data structure which is similar to this file. And then what I'm doing, I'm selecting the count of that file into this count variable. So there are 5 records. And what I'm doing now, I'm fetching it into a data structure. So right now it will only fetch the first one into the data structure, but we can give one more thing like fetch from C1 for how many rows we want to fetch, and it will hold all that records into the data structure. So this is an exercise for you. You can do some R&D on how to fetch multiple rows from a cursor, and you can perform the action. So I have given you some idea that you have to declare a data structure, and then you have to get the count, and there is a keyword which is used while fetching for how many rows we want to fetch that. So you can perform that action. And I think, yep, one more thing is left. Let me show you that also. The compiler options. So let me comment this line and perform a operation where I'll changing the name to Akshay. Okay. File 14. Yeah, if I call this program, so by the meaning of the SQL query, it should be reflected. But okay, I have to make a change to the query where the employee age is 23, right? 23. Yeah. So it should have updated this, but why it did not update? Because we have commented this line. So when we want to perform some update operations or insert or delete operations, if we give commit is equal to star none, so it will reflect the changes. Otherwise, when we do not specify this, it will give the commitment control. We'll learn about commitment control in the later sessions. For now, you can consider it as it will give the commitment control to the programmer. He can commit to those changes or he can roll back those changes if he want to. So now I have uncommented that commit is equal to star none. So now it has committed those changes and it did not go to that commitment control. It has directly updated those changes. So this I wanted to share. The compiler options, you can give that while compiling, but I'll suggest to give that in the program itself. And this is one more compiler option, close SQL cursor as star and mode. So it will tell it, we don't need to close it explicitly. It will automatically close the cursor when the program or the module ends. So I think I have covered all the topics. So that is all from my side. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hands and we'll be happy to address your queries. Thank you.
Thank you, Akshay, for your wonderful session. So if you have any kind of query, just raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute and then you can ask the questions.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Tarun, you can ask the question.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Sir, my question about the numeric variable. Why we actually the two numeric variable, right? So why we prefer zoned one instead of the packed one, sir?
Actually, there is no preference in that, but you can use sorry, you can use any type of numeric variable that you want in the program.
Okay,
There is
sir.
just one difference, that it will be the size which it will hold in the backend. The packed field will hold some less size in the backend, and whereas the zone will hold more than the packed. Otherwise, it is
Sir,
same.
right, sir. That's why my question. Actually, uh, that's my question. Means ki if the pack sorry, if the zone one acquire uh, much memory as compared to the zone one, sorry, the pack one, then why we use zone on this? That's
Right now, see, for the examples which we have created, it is a very small program. So it does not matter. In that case, the size does not matter, because anyways, it will hold only one value. So it will not matter. But when we are talking about a big program, say 5, 10, 20,000 lines, so in that case, the memory consumption will be more if we use zone fields. So there we use the packed fields. So because there will be so many fields, so the size consumption will be higher if we use zone. So right now we are using zone because does not matter, because we are anyways writing a small programs which are having 2 or 3 variables at most.
thank you.
Did you got the point?
Yes.
Okay. So instead of typing in the chat, it's better if you ask your questions verbally. This is a way for you to interact with us as well.
Hi, sir.
Hello,
Sir,
Sumit.
how can yes, sir, yes, sir. Sir, after completion of this internship program, sir, how can you get the PPO or any job opportunity?
So after the session, you will be assigned a case study. So after that, you have to complete that case study, and after that, according to the performance of the case study, you will be selected for next procedure, which is like online exam and interviews. So we will let you know about that. So most probably there are 3 interviews, in which first 2 were 2 technical interviews, and after there will be an HR interview. So this is the procedure. Like first one is an online exam, and after that interviews, and after that, if you perform well in all of them, then you will be handed over the opportunity to work here.
Sir, is there any coding round?
Yes. So technical interview, the coding round is already merged with the technical interview that you will face.
Yeah. And sir, every student get chance to get interview.
Depends on the performance in your case study
Case
that
study
we
means
will
sir,
going to
submit
assign.
assignment.
Yeah, after assignment, also assignment will be a criteria well also along with the attendance.
Yeah, sir.
So if anybody have any kind of question, they can just raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute and then ask the question. Also make sure you join our Skype group so you can ask the question in there and get help from us and also the other colleague that are present in that group. The assignment submission date will be given in upcoming sessions. So there are not much session remaining, so you will be informed about the assignment submission date and also the method to submit the assignment also. We are almost on time, so if anybody have question, they can just raise their hand and then we will allow them to unmute themselves and they can ask the question.
The people who will be spamming this chat or the Skype group, they will be highlighted, their name will be highlighted, and they will lose the opportunity. So be a professional, don't spam unnecessarily. And if you have any questions, we have given you the option to raise your hands and we'll answer your questions. So you can directly ask us the questions. So I think there are no more questions. And for the people who are asking that how we can check the cursor data, we are storing that value in some host variables, so we can check the data of that host variable.
Without
the
debugging, it is not possible to check individual data. So either we have to do a debug or we have to get the data into some file to check that.
You can raise your hands and then you'll be able to speak. We'll unmute you. I think there are no more questions, so we can wind up this call. You can practice on this. Practice, try to make some complex queries for that SQL cursor and see how it performs.
Also do some R&D around SQL and DB2 commands, so you can be able to perform that. And also complete the assignment that Akshay has given during the session.
Do you have any question, Randir?
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, sir. Sir, can you tell me about two technical round? That what is the parameter to doing interview in technical round?
Actually, after the completion of internship program, you will all receive a mail regarding that. So you, all of you will get information about that through the email.
Sir, in two technical round like DSA plus whatever we have taught in this internship program, both are teach about asked
Yes,
in interview, sir.
yes,
Yeah. And third round is HR round, yes.
yes.
Okay.
Actually, we will
Thank you,
let
sir.
everyone know about the procedure for hiring. So just before that, try to complete all the session and the case study that will be allotted to you. And after that, if you are selected, you will receive an email regarding the further process.
Sir, you talk about case study. What is the meaning of case study, sir?
It is like a mini
Is
project
it
that
different
will be
from
assigned
assignment?
on behalf of the session that you have covered till now.
Sir, this is different from assignment.
Yeah, that will be different from assignment. It is a working project, something like that on IBMI.
Oh, like project. Okay,
Yes.
sir. Thank you. Yeah.
So we can wind up this call.
Yes. I
Thanks
think
everyone